Okay, I've hit record, so welcome everyone again to the Open Humans Community Call. And we have not too many people here today, so I think to open the call, I'd like to invite folks to do a quick go round. If you shared something already that wasn't on the record, like you can share it again. But let's get spend just a couple, like 2 sentences. If you have something that you want to talk about during this meeting, let us know. And our format is going to be to pass the ball to the next person who should talk. So I'm going to pass the ball to James, who might recap something to share.
Thank you, Matt. So I was talking about, get the right wrist, Bangle.js. So it's the first open hardware smartwatch that I've come across, full stack firmware. And the guys have put amazing energy into the reverse engineer all the components. And so while it's great to have it, it's still kind of primitive in terms of the accuracy of all the sensors. But there's the heart rate, accelerometers, and GPS. Battery lasts about a day if you've got all that on. Yeah, so I think, maybe how as a community we can make this, contribute to this community and get rid of some of the data hassles we have with the more proprietary stuff. Pass it over to Noah, please.
Hi, I'm Noah Robichaun. I am a product management director at Condé Nast, a media company. And prior to that, I've been a journalist covering technology for many years and have just been a hobbyist in the space of human data of all sorts, and have been meaning to come to this meeting for many months now. It's been on my calendar and I just never make it. So I'm excited to just listen in and see what this is all about. And I'll pass it over to Benjamin.
I'm Ben. I've been kicking around Open Humans since before it was Open Humans. I'm mostly an anchor on the system rather than a helper, although I do pitch in here and there. And I'm here for the community call with nothing specific to contribute as per usual. And I'll pass it to Bastian. Bastian's on mute.
Yep, usually it's me pointing this out to other people. It's nice if it's the other way around. So I'm Bastian, I'm the Director of Research for Open Humans and a research fellow about citizen science in Paris, where I live now. And yeah, I've been interested in quantified self-style things for close to, I think, 9 years, going close to 10 now. So it's always fun to talk about it. And I will pass it on to Eric. Are you here?
Yeah, hi everybody.
Yeah, hey.
I'm Eric J. I have been, I think, involved with Quantified Self only for 4 years now. Although I say only 4, and then I think like, whoa, it's been 4? Okay. But Open Humans, much more recently, really. So just jumping on the call to be here as a kind of a listener and hopefully a resource in some of my time. I'm a biostatistician by training, so I tend to focus on a lot of single case and N of 1 type studies. And that's where I tend to dabble and play a lot, the analysis side and the study design side of things. So yeah, right. And I'll pass it to, I don't know whomever is left. So if I was the last one.
I guess it's me. My name is Kate. I'm leading Quality of Life Technologies Lab, computer scientist, and I'm hopefully to be also a resource for the community as I'm leading Quantified Self projects myself, also collaborated with Eric on some, and hopefully also in the future. And yes, hopefully a resource and contributing even more. Thank you.
So our first agenda item, I think, is to respond to a question that Kate posed in our Slack. And I think I answered it there, but we can answer it here too. And that is sort of updates on quantified flu. And Bastian, you did offer moments ago to talk about it, the updates. Do you want to go ahead and do
sure.
that?
I can do this. So the first question that Kate was, how many contributors are there right now? And I think it's around 130 people who have signed up. And I think we have around 50 people who actually have made publicly available their symptom tracking logs. And there has not been a lot of growth recently, largely because we've been refraining from reaching out to more people because we wanted to get the new data sources in place, namely the Apple Health one, the Google Fit, and the Garmin devices. And the good news here is that the Google Fit thing is just implemented since, I think, end of last weekend. I've made some minor changes today, so now it's actually linked on the website properly. So if anyone has heart rate data in Google Fit, they can now use quantified flu and get the visualizations done, and the data will be in their symptom logs as well. I see Matt is already writing. The Apple Watch is in progress, and yeah, the saga continues. So Matt put in a lot of work last week to get the hopefully really missing bit done, which was the sign in with Apple capability on the Open Humans website, which so far is a bit hidden. It only works from inside the app and not from outside so far, just to make the Apple reviewers happy, because we are not. Well, I think, Matt, you can say more of why you want to keep it
Yeah,
hidden,
I
but I
can.
think we are, yeah.
I'm happy to unpack a little nerdery here.
Yeah.
So the Apple login on the website is using an existing library for authorization, except this is like a feature pull request right now. And actually I'm using a pull request made to the pull request. And so I'm like, okay, how about we hide this under a testing flag? So it is available if you use the right testing flag, and it will activate it on your account, and you can see the button and it works. But since it's not merged into master for that library, I think it's wisest to kind of wait until that's done. Fingers crossed, it looks like this is the PR that everyone's like contributing to, but it's just in development. That said, it's kind of magical and cool to be able to log into the Open Humans website on my phone and do Face ID if I'm not wearing a face mask, and not have to type in a password for anything. So it does work, and it worked in sync with this app. So I'll pass the ball back to you, Bastian.
Yeah, no, I think the thing is the library has been sitting there for quite a while, this pull request, to get this feature into the library we need. But now, since Apple changed their rules and said you can't get any apps into the Apple App Store anymore, if you offer a login with Facebook or login with Google and there's no login with Apple, they will not get you on the App Store any longer, and everyone needs to abide by these new rules now. All of a sudden, there's like a big interest in getting this pull request and this new feature into the library because everyone is having the same issue as we have. And so I think, like, partially thanks to Matt, at least, like this pull request, because you found a couple of bugs that you could fix there as well. It will hopefully soon be properly deployed on Open Humans as well. And the status right now is that it's under review with Apple. Just when Matt and I were meeting before this call, I got the email that it's now under review after it has been sitting in under review. And I just got an email. Please let it not be from them now. Because I was joking that it's probably as soon as I mentioned during our call that it's under review, we get the rejection email for another new thing. But no, it's still under review for now. Let's hope that maybe in the next few days it's going through and we can get Apple Watch data into quantified flu as well.
I want to say that one thing that's exciting about this app is that it could be used to extend to other types of data in Apple Health. And so that's often something that are like, how do I export my Apple Health data? With the caveat that it's exported to Open Humans, this is going to be another tool for doing that.
Yeah, because I don't think there are currently many of these tools around. I just saw that, I think it was yesterday, that there was this conversation on Twitter where Gary said, yeah, the quantified self-access tool is not maintained anymore and it doesn't work on the latest iPhone operating systems any longer. So having an alternative that might export data in the same way would be really nice. Because we had an Apple Health export app in the past, which James Turner made, but unfortunately the library that he was using for accessing the data was no longer maintained and it fell into disrepair and it is in the same state as the quantified self-access app. So I think right now there's no good way to get your data out of iPhones, which is a shame because the data is actually really nice that you can get. There's a lot of interesting things that you get from Apple Watches, like not only the heart rate, but I enjoyed playing around with the environmental sound recordings they do for giving you like how loud it is. and things like this. So there's lots of opportunities.
You can still export your data in some way, right? Like as a file?
You can get a huge file, which is an XML dump of all of your data. And it's ridiculously
XML, everyone's
large.
favorite format.
Hey, be nice. Some of us worked on those specs.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I did want to highlight that the app might go and do more in the future.
Bastian, can I ask about the Google Health integration? When I go to, because I have a bunch of Google Fit, Google Health stuff, but when I go to the web page thinking I would need to reconnect, it's only asking for Fitbit and Aura. It's not asking for Google Health permissions.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I think I have not updated the permissions. So let me.
And that is my contribution for the day.
Yeah, no. You can connect your Google Fit already right in the quantified flu app, but it should of course also be able to use the standalone tool. So I need to update the permissions there. And I think the last update on quantified flu is that I put the link into this data visualization that a master student who's an intern with me right now is working on. And I mean, I guess I can also just share the screen real quick to show it. Desktop 3, that sounds about right. Oops. So there we go. So it's a very simple visualization where you have on the y-axis all the different symptoms people log, and on the x-axis the different dates. And you get this nice little heat map visualization for which symptoms you have reported on which day. And he's currently working on, it's currently not really interactive despite being JavaScript, but he's working on getting the tooltips to work properly. You can see that if you hover over it already, it will show you like the level that people have reported. But two more things to come in the next few days for this is making it interactive with proper tooltips and also showing the comments people have written, because the comments in many cases are, at least to me, much more interesting than looking at the numbers because they're much more informative. And making it scroll properly, that if you have like a long timeline, you can scroll and then we can put it up on the Quantified Flu website, where we currently have these tables that just give the symptom reports. So that's the next thing to come, hopefully soon. And I think that's all the Quantified Flu updates that I have in my mind. Did I miss anything, Matt?
Are you planning to add the wearable data to the visualization, or is Basile planning to?
Yeah, so I think this would be really nice to get it at least not maybe in the heat map format, but on the same timeline level to give like the resting heart rate and body temperature data as well. So I think that's the next step to go.
Any questions that folks have or opinions on quantified flu? Okay, so I think it would be fun to talk about the Bangle.js smartwatch, which is I just learned about, so maybe there's a lot to learn. James, I know you shared stuff before we had started recording when we first started, but I'd like to invite you to just say why this matters, because I think that we all understand, but it's great to hear it from you.
Yeah, sure. I went to the Bay, I think in 2010, 2012, and I bumped into the founder of Fitbit when there was two people. And I got a conversation going because I'd also met, Gary Quantified Self. And I said, so what's the vision? Empower the individual with their data and like everything you would believe in. And it's like, let's monopolize the data. Yeah. And that's all the issues you've just been talking about, getting permission and the technical hassle. So then I went to Embryonic and Indiegogo Kickstarter, and there was a thing called Amigo, again, out of the Bay. But it was open hardware, at least open data, and I could program the firmware down to the frequency that I would record LED, the sensor stuff. And it went bankrupt. And then sort of built my own, and then there was the Pebble Watch came to save us all. And then it went bankrupt, and then got acquired by Fitbit. So this is, I've always tried to, pursue the open source, open hardware, but then you're always hacking away at the most primitive clunky user interface. And so laterally, I found Gadget Bridge, which is this Android for your like open source anarchist project, which is actually teamed up with part of Bangle.js. And so when that announcement came out at Christmas time, it was, oh, Gadget Bridge now has its first open hardware native device in the history of the project running on its system. And so I bought it, obviously, just to go through all the teething early adopter hassles. But I always think the prize of having your open data and open hardware and your open computations, but it does sort of hamper you in the short run from getting quality analysis and barrier to entry to get more mainstream, less techie people involved because of the problems of signing up and just installing and using, because you can't generally get them through the standard app stores. They will be banished to some degree, and unless you have to go through open source Linux. But I'm always like, whatever it takes, back that thing, knowing that the probability of success is always low. But with this one, I see something far more revolutionary in terms of the app infrastructure and the slickness of web Bluetooth to get rid of running all these proprietary systems. And my gut feel is I'd like to do some sort of crypto crowd sale to hopefully raise a few million for this guy rather than the 100K. It puts us down an agenda of like a version 2, pretty good, version 3, amazing, and then the network effect kicks in. We can do things that the Apple Watch can't do. And it will last, the battery will last a month. And so really just right through the stack, try and get this open and community feeding into it, and somehow find a funding model that doesn't put us down the Pebble or the Amigo and all the others in between, so that we can just sit down in our conversations and do the meaningful things with the data rather than 99% of our time just getting the data to allow us to play. Anyway, you can hear I'm passionate about it. So that's what's got me to the Bango.
Yeah, that's really cool. I don't know, Matt, you mentioned briefly the card 10 batch thing. Did you talk about more about it, or?
No, just that it reminded me of that, and
yeah,
wishing that I could get the card 10.
Because I don't know whether James, there's the card 10, the Chaos Communication Club in Germany made for its camp, I think last year, was it? These open source badges, but basically they're withdrawn their smartwatches as well. And it's all open source as well. And they have a small app store for it as well. Here's like an overview of the badge 10, which is this poster they have for like all the sensors they have and stuff. And I think they even had an ECG contact included. So you can also, like the Apple Watch, get like your ECG done. And they also have an app store for it. Well, app store. They have a list of things where you can get software for it. And it's also, I think, basically all of it is open source and open hardware. It's really fun to see, but it's much less slick than the Bango.js, just from looking at the website of the Bango.js and the app store they have. I have to say they are much more mature.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Yeah.
So you can go, I'll just try and find the website, but it's like all the hassles about connectors and stuff. All you're doing is going to a web app, so to speak, which again, I think it's mainly if it's on a mobile phone, like a mobile browser. I think on the Apple, you need to do some plugin to get access to your web Bluetooth, and it's just a web page, and you just click to your in fact, here we go. It's just like do the demo. It's like
John, have you had good experience with Gadget Bridge? I haven't tried it in a couple of years.
Yes, I'm a huge fan. And
I'm still rocking the Pebble with Rebel.io. So
yeah, yeah. So you get this web page, and it just says connect, and it will just do that. And then you got all your app interface, and you can, and then even like the interface to you had a computation, or you want to embed a new chart like Sebastian's heat map. Then there's all the tools in the browser to do that too. It's not so dissimilar from the Ethereum network, where you've got all these IDEs in the cloud that test your smart contract, and once it works, you then publish it up to the new thing. So I'm not moving it. So,
That's really
again,
cool.
it's like, it's like when you get your first mobile phone that has the games on it. All the games are from the 80s, and you're living in 2010 or whatever. It's like, so as I said, it's this quandary. We couldn't do the heart rate data stuff on this product. If you stand still, you could, but again, it's not got that robustness. But then it's like, how as a community do we support it and crowdfund or get more funding into it? Because again, it's just one or two people in Oxford, I think, and it seems to be the Node.js community. So a bit like the CCC, they gave it as a free product pre their crowd sale before Christmas. And again, there's one or two corporates in that community seen the merits to probably sponsor it. I'd imagine reading between the lines. But yeah, £100,000 was done on Kickstarter in a few weeks. So yeah, so I haven't reached out to him personally yet, but so back in terms of Gadget Bridge, I use all the there's a Macefit and these Mi Band 2, Mi Band 3, Mi Band 4. I've used them for like 2.5 years, and I've got all that data for my crypto peer-to-peer network streaming live all the time. Hopefully I'll have to do a demo in the next few weeks. So it's basically, as soon as you sync your data, you can do anything you want anywhere. And I've created this new ledger, which would make it interruptible in theory with everything else, with zero hassle and hoss from the developer side, and a guarantee that it would be interruptible because of the cryptography promises in the data types. But I will be super excited if I can show that, but 8 years in, that's still a challenging problem. But so I think I've chosen to persevere in this clunkier hardware reverse engineering world, believing that the Bangle JSs and the Pebbles will continue to emerge, and at some magical point in the near future, the software, hardware, data people, and the activism all comes to be to give us this sustainable future rather than frustration of hacking other people's protocols or getting permission for our own data to get back, with the caveat you're never really sure what data you're getting back. What software rules were done to make the step count. That's completely open and transparent on Bangle because the community would have built it. So yeah, it's a hard journey. I don't think it makes you any money, but I think potentially it's I'm excited. I think I'll always give it the benefit of the doubt, and in the meantime, so there's this other trend like the VMAs fits and Gadget Bridge. You'll see it in their documentation. They're starting to say, well, we're not going to shut you down, but we're starting to do all these crypto token permission things. So you can see that trend happening, and I was actually fortunate enough to meet one of the directors of Exome in Berlin 18 months ago. I didn't know he was in the room, and he just came up to me at a Chinese hackathon and said, "What are you doing with my device?" So he said he was interested to keep in contact, but obviously if you're successful, and if you were successful reverse engineering the Apple product, and it took away their analytic USP, then you'd either be a bot or you'd shut down, right? So if we're successful in using their data, I think there's a risk that they would shut you off, or maybe shut you off in a sense of you get it every day or every 5 minutes, or that XML format changes, so yeah, I'm not sure whether other people have chosen to in terms of their hardware choices.
Do those black box feature extractors give you a hard time ever? You were mentioning that, you know, the algorithms are currently inaccessible if they use for step counting or heart rate or XYZ. Is that like actively problematic? I just haven't heard before.
So the classic test of that would be that, you know, I had all the Fitbits and I never had Apple, it's just a principle, but like the state of the art wearables across the products, and you wear like 4 of them at the same time, and you know, and you get different answers, right? Even people within different brands of Fitbits get different answers, but that's because the algorithm's being tailored for a particular meaning, right? So I don't actually think the absolute number is important. It's the relative, you know, movement of the accelerometer, and if you say, you know, this XYZ accelerometer thrust is equal to 1 step, and Fitbit says it's a slightly, it's 2/3 now, or and I'm just saying, you know, we just assume it's a step, and everybody calls a database table a step. Even a heart rate, you know, is it, as I said, I could sample on the Amigo, you know, is it 10,000 times a second, 50,000 times a second, 100,000? Now, obviously, if you went to higher speeds than your battery, you know, life of the product. But again, it's all totally open, and you're free to program it unless you had genuine foundations of doing it. So the people like in Bangle.js have sat with like microscopes on the firmware and the hardware spec to figure out what the algorithms bedded into these things were doing to make the results. And thus when you, I don't know if I can share it, so I should take it off my wrist. It's easy for me to. Yeah, so again, you've got this interface that so you go through and you'll get pedometer, your alarm clock, something for the heart rate.
Do you think that that'd be a good possibility for open source algorithms? So saying like, because I mean, I develop hardware, and sometimes I'm unsure about how to build my feature extractors, and sort of saying, I know a lot of open source happens after you already get the steps, or after you already get the heart rate and the sort, but potentially collaborating on the feature extractors for a certain hardware configuration. Because of course, like, yeah, from version to version, you can't exactly use the exact same algorithm based on like a slightly different hardware placements, even if you use the same sensors, or a slightly different like band of physiologies. But yeah, what are your thoughts on like open sourcing and like having open source like collaborations on those lower level feature extractors?
So if you read like his blog and stuff and his YouTube channel, he will show you this whole bundle of hardware bits, heart rate sensors, you know, the boards and stuff. And he wrote to them all. As you know, I don't know what that means, but he says he wrote to all the component providers, right? Because you know, Fitbit and Apple, it might be the same hardware, you know, sensor and stuff. And you know, some said no, some said yes, and then you know, the ones he got, but even then he had to reverse engineer. So there is a resistance, and obviously it's harder to reverse engineer hardware than software. Well, maybe not a neural net, but you know, but the effort the guy's gone through, Williams is insane. I think, you know, I did a little bit of this, you know, when I, you know, 8 years ago, and just I didn't find myself very skillful at doing Bluetooth and all the commands, and you know, I sat
Same.
a year just reverse engineering the Amigo even, and then when you get your handle on it and you want to scale up, you either get acquired or shut down. It's and then you're like, oh, start again, and then Pebble comes along.
Or worse, taking on bad investors.
I wonder if this is something that's appealing for academics or that are interested in asking questions about feature extraction. I mean, I get that commercial providers have very little interest in doing anything that's not going to obviously benefit them. That said, I don't really know much about the academic work on interpreting the sensor data to extract features. Maybe it's something that others here know. Like Kate, you know so much about like wearable use. I don't know, maybe this is something you know.
Oh yeah, we've been also hacking some Chinese bands in the past in order to get the raw data and to get our steps counts ourselves, right? And getting into the lab-based study where we had a more organized way of understanding how people walk, and then we asked people to wear different shoes and trousers and put their phones in the bags and yeah, different places and whatever, and then treadmills. And then when we've seen that we could derive, so I'm talking now about phones and wearables and getting from the raw data to our own step counts. And then there was a moment when we said, okay, that's enough. The phone and the wearables are giving us some steps. So it's now the matter of calibrating for a person. So we do know that maybe not particularly accurate, but it's accurate enough in relative terms when you start walking more or less, specifically because we've been looking for use for elderly people, and the ones which we've been hacking and also using not only the Chinese, but like Pebble, there was one, and there was another one from Switzerland. It was also huge. It was very stigmatizing, and our elder users said, don't even try to get with this. It looks like an alarm button. I'm not going to wear it because everybody else is going to think I'm this very vulnerable person, right? So it's very stigmatizing. So then we switched to early enough, we switched to WeThings, which become Nokia. And they were giving some API. And then we also have integrated Garmin and Polars. Polar was one of the earlier ones. But we do know that people like our elderly users are not going to wear Polars. They find it, and also some Garmin and Polars, they find it too fancy. So actually at the end, I have to say that Fitbit is in a bit of winner because there's so many designs, we can colors, and they can change the straps and things. So it's you know, now what's happening, we are going after human factors. We are deriving whatever the device gives us, and we look into, from algorithmic perspective, we are looking to relative change in their behaviors, and we closely look into literature and look who has recently evaluated this particular Fitbit and this particular or this or that, and then incorporating in our algorithm. But then we look at the relative change, and we look at the stickability factor of users wearing it, caring for it, charging it, and not complaining, and really even forgetting that they are wearing it for research. Of course, it's consented, and from time to time they're also being called for fill up some serve assessments and patient-reported outcomes and quality of life assessments. But then in between, they are really owning the device. You know, so it's different factors. But I think like everybody here also, and also some of my colleagues in health informatics, we all started with looking at the signal processing of accelerometers. Yeah, and there are some people who are still doing this.
Yeah, I mean,
this is kind of,
I know I know that the Maker Lab at my institute, they are building their own like frugal wearable thing, which doesn't have any display. It's basically just the accelerometer and the heart rate sensor, and they are very interested in getting their measurements to match up, especially for the heart rate, to the Polars, because that's the gold standard. Everyone is using the Polar chest straps, and they are now basically giving people both things and then try to see whether they can reverse engineer to get the same measurements.
Do you think you could post this kind of data set on like a Kaggle and just have like the community like almost compete to build models?
Yeah, I mean, this would be interesting to do. I think they are now starting to hand out, or I think they had planned to hand out the first things to a group of, I think, cyclists, because one of the team members has like connection to like professional cyclists who are very interested in their heart rate and was like, would you be willing to like also wear this weird $20 cheap thing around your wrist while wearing a chest strip you're wearing already in any case to get some interesting data from when you cycle, so you can have like a look at the data as well, and maybe along the road you will learn something about your fitness, but mostly you are already doing this in any case. Are you interested in generating open source data and then hopefully get like an open source device for this? So yeah, I think this would be really cool. And I just sent to the Maker Lab people the Bengal JS and was like, did you see this? Like,
Yeah.
you have competition in like a bit more upscale market.
Stop building whatever you're building. Just buy this. It's always a little tough to be faced with something like that. I love that Kaggle idea though, and that's something where I imagine you could create a project which puts that data together and creates like an open data contribution project to try to develop algorithms. That's cool. I mean, I can see that like Open Humans could help in that spot. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I know from like with OpenSNP for the genetic data, we did this not with Kaggle, but with like an open source equivalent, which was called Crowd AI. I think they've shut down now, but they were run at the EPFL in Switzerland by, probably Marcel Salate, Kate. And he was running it like, like 5-6 years ago, I think he was running this. And we did like a competition on predicting height from genetic data, which was using open data and then open source algorithms and everything, which was really nice. So yeah, I think there's definitely potential.
well, I guess my next step is going to be to order one.
It's $76 to have it delivered, and I already know 2 other people who are in the hackerspace world who have ordered it in the last hour.
Really, I thought I saw a 15-pound delivery, but I didn't click all the way through.
It's 15 pounds, but it's $50 when you ship it to the or 50 pounds when you ship it to the US, and the exchange rate is pretty good right now. So it's $76.75 to get it to the US.
That's as much as it costs for the thing itself, huh?
Yeah.
Make that 3 people who just bought in the last hour.
Or that live during the call. That's very effective advertisement, James.
I think the one thing that me really excited was this permissionless to update the algorithms, and they built in TensorFlow. Now I'm building a thing called SafeFlow, which is the open source version of that, with a ledger and everything, smart building. But that's really what we want. We want stuff to work, and Kat says, it's for elderly people, so you download that algorithm for step count, it's, and Olympic athletes, you download something else onto it, and then all those Olympic athletes form a network and cross train, and there's just permissionless ability to do that, and that's why I'm optimistic that as a community we will always outcompete the proprietary solution. But that's to be proven, right? But, right now it's so hard just to get the data flowing that.
One of the things I recall is Rachel Kalmar's skepticism or cynicism around open hardware in particular as a market, and it was something along the lines of if you're trying to make money on the hardware itself and it's open hardware, someone in China is just going to create a copy of it and sell it for much cheaper and undercut you, which I don't really know what the answer to that is. That's tough.
I have an answer to that. I think the trend is that hardware will be given away for free, and then you'll get an Open Humans crypto token to reward you if you actually add value to the person's life. So,
it's kind of like the Amazon Fire tablet model, where it's you actually sell the device for cheaper than it costs because the software ecosystem adds value to the organization. And yeah, potentially just like seeing hardware as more of a liability than as a asset, as it should be, because otherwise we're always afraid of China, is probably a cool way forward.
Yeah, it ties into like you're the product, not the product is the product, or their relationship with you and protecting it and monetizing that becomes like the value. rather than the hardware itself.
Hopefully it respects you as well, like JLJ was saying.
Yeah, I can see. I think everyone here can feel the tension there, because the moment the hardware is not the thing that you're paying the money, like that is being sold at a loss, it's like, it's just like everything else that is free but not free. Facebook, Google, yeah.
Some better than others.
So I think we have kind of an open remaining 15 minutes with nothing in particular. So people should feel free to say something. I'm kind of distracted trying to buy my bangle right now. But it's, I'm trying to think, like, are there other open humans things? I know we have self-research chats on Thursdays, and it's like, or we could all talk about the coronavirus crisis again.
No,
Bastian, do you have any
like,
ideas?
No, I wanted to hear, Kate, do you have an update? I think, I don't know whether that was last week, you mentioned that you got a new Fitbit and how your activity levels have dropped just by changing the device. I think this fits in nicely into the topic here.
Exactly, I forgot to mention, yeah. So I changed from Fitbit 2 to Fitbit 4. And I was looking for, specifically, I wanted to see something with oxygen saturation. They have something, and maybe they claim they are going into pre-diagnosis of sleep apnea, which I don't have. I sleep very well and everything. However, I wanted to see just generally what does it give, and also if you can get it through API. And then as I said a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I said I was so disappointed, because normally I would hit not only 10,000 steps per day, but also I would have 30 minutes of active minutes, which are a high heart rate. There's a, like, activity, moderate or vigorous activity where I walk quite fast, and it counts like exercise, and it needs to be in the bounds of 10 minutes. So at least 10 minutes at once, and then at the end of the day, I'll have 10,000 steps and at least 30 minutes of this nice active minutes, and everybody happy. And now I got a new device. I keep doing the same things. It's like I get 10,000 steps, the same routines, but I don't know, maybe like only just few minutes of this active minutes. And I was wondering, do I walk slower recently or something? But after a week, it adjusted. Yes. And I also contacted them, and I also have pointed out that, can you just honestly tell me it's totally different algorithm? I should be putting more attention. And the device is learning, so algorithm is first readjusted. It's really weird, because actually, yes, I'm a Fitbit user, but it seems to be started from scratch on some kind of, somebody explained me. So I got an answer from Fitbit. First is based on population statistics or heart rate zones and everything, and then it learns and it adjusts. And then the lady suggested that I'm really fit, that I'm so fit that now it's even better, and I will need to work harder for my minutes. So I kind of see it. Yes, it's I really need to walk, even like really keep up the speed of my walking. But it's interesting, as we've been talking about the algorithms, right? So it's a black box, and yeah, so interesting learning. Don't get discouraged, just keep walking.
So with these sensors, there's different ways to use them. So saying with an accelerometer, you can either do like gestures or just like big movements. Some people really crank up the refresh rate, and they can do like bioacoustic sensing and sort of look at how the vibrations when your joints move, and be able to tell like additional things. And like similarly with SpO2, I think that if you place it distally, you can tell what kind of fight or flight responses the person's having. Are there anything, as someone who's probably researched this more, is there any like sensor application that you just don't have access, like the hardware is there and it would be a really cool question to ask, but just because you don't have access to the hardware, you don't have access to like whether it's hand positions using IMUs and bioacoustics, or just interesting uses of these hardware sensors that like the black box keeps you away from?
Yeah,
That's
I think
probably
like,
specific.
no, I can tell you at least for like the fight or flight response, that's exactly what I know people want to use it for. So I have friends in neuroscience who are interested in like fear responses, and they would be really interested in using cheap wearables for measuring it, but they can't because the raw data is not in like a quality or in like a granularity that they could use it for. Even if you have like a Fitbit where you can get like the intraday data if you trick around long enough, even then it's really hard to use it for these things.
Well, it would be really fun to see academic teams, like someone say, like, we've created a fear response detector for Bengal, and like we're testing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
I
one.
mean, I can see like academic development feeding the development of this community in a way, since it's open there.
Yeah, the data's never been there before. You're right.
So
Like,
I have a request. I'm a late arrival, but Matt knows deeply about this request, which is really just vibration measures. So, you know, you can, if you have really good output on the frequencies that you want, and then you can do diagnoses of like tremor and things like this. And none of the wearables, all of the wearables have, I mean, the sensor is trivial in there, but trivially available, but you have to really go through a lot of steps to get the data.
do any of us have any contacts at Fitbit or Apple that we can leverage to get these features in?
Well, I've actually been inside the spaceship and talked to, you know, the Apple Watch kind of team at a fairly senior level, and I emerged from that meeting utterly convinced that we would get nothing we wanted ever. So I think it was quite an interesting meeting. I really enjoyed it anthropologically, but programmatically, it was very clear that they were interested only in this community for kind of ideas about potential product development, but feature requests were off the table.
That's only until we start developing better algorithms than the one they're able to produce in-house.
And then it only depends on what you license it under.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I just want to take that. Like, it was a very interesting meeting from an anthropological viewpoint. I'm just going to save that, reuse that somewhere. Gary, since you joined late, I don't know if you know what we're talking about.
Well, I caught up a little because I read the notes, and then I checked out the Bengal and everything, so pretty neat.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. We have a handful of people on the call who have decided to go and order it. So let's see.
I got another topic. I mentioned it briefly. I don't know it was last week or the week before, but there was this longevity event on. And so longevity and so you have all mainly like Aubrey de Grey's, you know, the you know, curating sort of more view of the world. But one of the projects said, you know, it's like a gene therapy or, you know, some magic, you know, biochemistry, you know, cure everything, potential startup. And he said the biggest thing that's going to hold us back, and I agree with this, is how do you know if something's working? And that's the problem I grapple with every day. I mean, everything I'm building is just trying, does this work? Does it, you know, should I try this? You know, and if I do, is it working? And, you know, the thing that alarmed me was that he thinks that, you know, it's like, so make an analogy to like an investment house. You know, he only does one of the, you know, one stock, right? But because he knows you're going to need a portfolio of these drugs, he will be the trusted person to look across them all and give you the combination that's right for you, given your age, ability, and stuff, which just horrified me, right? It should be the network that's deciding, you know, what's right. But this question remains: how do we know what works, and how are we going to assess what works? And so it's just an open question.
I like to approach it by gathering like superset data. and sort of saying, hey, yeah, if you only have like one data stream in isolation, you can't really tell. But if you have like a superset of like, oh, you wear 4 smartwatches, and then you can tell how well they work by saying, oh, well, 3 of them are pretty close and 1 of them is off, or X, Y, Z, and you can use these supersets, whether they're the same sensor, like accelerometers on your arm, or just saying like heart rate taken optically from the wrist versus like a polar that takes heart rate using the EKG signal, and saying, oh, we'll use 2 of these sensors with different like levels of accuracy to like model how well it's working. Is that kind of like towards what you were, what might help in that question?
It's at a higher level. So you do all everything you just described, and it says, oh, James, you need to do more interval training and push your heart rate up to 180. And you'd have to do it over 3 months.
Like
I do it. I do it, and I have a heart attack and die. Right. You know, so I'm saying, like, how can I trust? I mean, when it comes to magic drug or gene therapy. So the example I always use in my memorial project is tracking my hay fever. So of course, like, one of the hopes is like a gene therapy that just basically intervenes in my immune system and says, just calm down. It's like most COVID deaths are your immune system attacking yourself, right? After a week seems to be the trigger point. So in hay fever, it's a lot milder, but it does kill some people. But it's like, okay, so this, wearable algorithm to, a chemical drug or a gene therapy says it works, it works, it works, it works. It's like, there's a lot of diet magazines that say that, right? But everybody's obese, it's like, so I'm just saying, how do I make the choice? And once I make a choice, how do I get feedback that I'm, progressing towards the outcome that I'm expecting? And so I'm not sure with that environment or what that's, how we shape that, but we can measure all we like, and we can get better at measuring and get rid of all the hassles on algorithms. But ultimately, how do we assess whether something's working is the biggie for me.
Sounds like an app development problem, or like an academic, just like how do we track, everyone's doing medical studies and like tracking the efficacy of processes. And I think, in the open space, I know you've been mentioning decentralized structures a lot, and privacy, and I think through the use of like clever federated learning, zero knowledge proofs, and other techniques to basically crowdsource this data better is one of like the only ways forward to actually making community applications that can be as effective as like Apple applications, where they literally have all of the personally identifiable data that they want, and they can run these. But hopefully we'll be able to get that data and keep track of it and modularize it effectively.
At some point, the epistemological questions around like, is this truth or what is true? It breaks down in so many categories, right? Like, how true do you need it to be? What are you trying to prove? Like, is it a long-term outcome or an intervention, or do you feel better? What is it you're actually asking about? But I'm also reminded a little bit about how open source works as this community of tools where it just like solves a thing, and other people start using it. And if it solves it well enough for them, they don't look too deep into it. This raises, there's, kind of parallels here of like, well, it worked well enough, so I'm using it. I put it into my larger piece of software, and like some years later, there's a dependency that like major infrastructures has, and like nobody's really dug into the foundation. And I think that sensibility is kind of what James is getting at, of like, okay, it seemed to work, but like, how do we really know? Who's really scrutinizing that? I'm not sure there's a great answer. Like in open source, that's an open question. Sorry, James, you're muted if you're talking.
I was thinking of the Linux example with the backdoor and a command line, just, was it 2 years or 3 years ago? But it's more like I was saying, like my project, I was fasting, and I can't fast anymore because it's pretty clear that fast over 24 hours, my immune system will not be optimal, which seems a crazy risk to be taken if that's true, right? But that's the reason I've been doing it, because I think I need to intervene with my immune system. So I thought it was an interesting experiment. So it's like, so what can I do? And then how can I know if it's working? So I'm on this antihistamine right now, and I've gotten, if there was a twin of me, I'd be like, one would have it and one wouldn't have it. And then I'd be looking at the records of both. And it's like, yeah, it's like how, when n equals 1, how do you, so I'm like, I believe the drugs I've been taking for like half my life are not really good for me, right? And the more I've become educated, the more I've researched them and stuff, I realize it's probably my biggest cancer risk in my inputs into my life, I think. But so, that's my motivation to get off it. But when I have all these other people who says it can cure it, which one am I going to go to? And then how do I do my self experiment to see whether it's working?
Do they make the efficacy studies public when it comes to like drugs that they have on the market, and saying, oh, was our design of experiments, this is why we believe it works? I feel like they'd have a fiduciary duty to like provide you, as someone who takes the medication, with that information.
Well, I don't know if you know Ben Goldstein. Is it Ben Goldstein of Open Trials?
Ben Goldacre.
Ben Olga, yes. He's down in Cambridge. Yeah, so I'll be crude. It's pretty much all lies. So, and he provided the evidence to show you how you have this normal distribution of trial data, and anywhere there's a positive trial, then there's never the negative. There's a distribution of all the, because different trials have the spectrum, and the ones that have all the super strong results never have any of the tail bits or the. So yeah, he's kind of scathing to that whole process, and I'd be even more so. But that's going back to these experiments. I said, if it works with us, then that's the real evidence, and it's working today, it's working tomorrow, it's working next week. I come to the next hay fever season, oh, it's not working. Oh, I've changed as a human, I've got older, or the climate's not so sunny and warm, or late winter, it's like, so I don't, why would I need to take the drug? It's like I can just, that was the thing that got me started on the drugs, was like I stopped taking them at the worst time of the year. And there's always like a 8 to 10 day lag before the effect wears off. But then I was like clear of it. And I thought, well, actually this year from August and September, I don't have to take my drugs. But unless you take the risk of coming off, right? So I was lucky, or it worked, right? Whereas like the next season could be really warm in Scotland. I might, have an asthma attack because I come off it early, right? But I'd imagine all these algorithms that we could, have in Open Humans would give me the best risk profile, given being in weather projections and stuff like that, So anyway, I think we're at our hour. So
Yeah, Noah said bye on chat and
that's
signed
why
off.
some of us were waving.
Yeah. And yeah, there's a lot to pick up here, maybe in chat. If you're around on Thursday, the self-research stuff is, yeah, I don't have great answers, but I find great answers from others that attend the chat. So it was great to have folks here, old faces, new. I think it's mostly familiar faces this time, so it's been great. And I look forward to seeing people next week in future chats. Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Stay healthy.
You too. Bye.